Hello, YouTube. All right, this is Mahadeva, the OG Thunder Wizard. All right, so today I want to share with you some more information about how to achieve huge amounts of power that you may not understand how easy it is to tap into. Imagine how much power you think you would want to experience from the universe. Imagine whatever that is. It's actually very easy to accomplish that. And one of the things that I learned is that the most powerful techniques are the simplest. And one of the things that teachers do in order to protect their most secret knowledge is they complicate it. Now that serves a couple of different functions. The first function is that if it's too simple, the mind doesn't believe it. So your intellect just won't accept, something really simple can actually be the key to infinite power. Because the intellect wants to feel like it's doing something. It wants to feel like it's in control. So the more complicated the techniques and the more mental effort that goes into it, the more visualization, the more that the intellect thinks that it's doing something, and therefore, it's people prefer that. So what teachers have done throughout the millennia is that they allow people to think that, and they don't try and talk them out of that, and they give them very complicated rituals that take a long time. Now you end up getting to the same place eventually, but what it does is it gives the teacher the ability to watch the student, to see if the student can handle the energy, to see if the student is worthy of the energy, because you'll find out if the student is coming from a place of immaturity. In other words, if you give too much power, Donald Trump, to somebody with limited maturity, they abuse that power. And so when you're talking about spiritual power, you have to protect people. And so teachers would allow people as they come in to follow their natural instinct of overcomplicating things so that they could test to see what the motives of the student was. And we've talked about that before in previous videos when we talk about the difference between the right and the left-hand path. Because either way you've got to pay. You've got to pay a price no matter which way you go. The left-hand path, which forget about the whole left-hand thing for the moment. The left-hand path represents the quick and simple road to power. So in order to get power, you have to give something away. And so what you end up giving away is your identity, your ego, if you will. And you also have to become fully conscious of all of your feelings. So in order to make space for all of the power, you've got to get rid of yourself. Now, a lot of you listening to me think you know what that means. But what you think I'm talking about, many of you, is that you think that destroying your identity is the way to do it. And you think that's what spirituality is. And you think you're doing that. But when it's heard that way without true understanding, what can happen lots of times is people just go into denial. So they suppress all of their thoughts, all of their feelings and their ego. And they think that they are turning themselves into nothing. But in reality, that's just their false ego. In fact, you hear about people who will talk about how I've humbled myself and that's pure ego. So that's not really what we're talking about. In order to become nothing, you must experience all of your feelings, positive and negative, and then let them be expressed, and then work to not be attached. That's a whole different deal. Now, when you go down the left-hand path, which is the path of easy, immediate power, then that power will do that to you. And then there is the danger of you run into the 1 in 100,000 type of individual who does not have the maturity to act selflessly and thirsts after power, but they have the discipline to tolerate their negative feelings. They don't get rid of them, they don't work through them, they don't suppress them. They tolerate the challenge of the negative feelings that come up, and then they end up with a lot of power, and then they end up paying a price as well. But that price is much like you see in, all the movies. The Sith Lord ends up, this old mangled, but has all kinds of power. So they end up paying a horrific price for their power. But the average person, what ends up happening is the other reason why teachers do not teach the most powerful paths and the most powerful techniques right off the bat is because most people will just, they'll burn out. They won't handle it. Once, they feel the power and the power is really amazing, but then all of their feelings come up and they can't tolerate that, so they leave. And the unconscious mind will go to incredible lengths to prevent them from doing it. I can remember when I was teaching the spirit fighting, which is the most powerful thing I know of, which, and people would come to learn, and I would always make sure that I sat them down and I had a talk with them. And I would say, okay, so if you want to learn this, then you have to be aware you're going to go through huge changes and you're going to have to really take a look at yourself. And almost invariably, everybody would say, oh, yeah, totally. I mean, I've been working on myself for years. And I'd say, okay, but I know you think you know what I'm talking about, but you don't. No. I've been looking at myself for years, and I've been shadow work, and say, okay, I'm just letting you know, this is, I have to tell you this ahead of time just to let you know. So, and then I start teaching them and they feel the power, and then they disappear. And so much so, the unconscious mind will find whatever it can to get you away from that power, because the power means that the unconscious mind starts to lose control, and it doesn't want to do that. So in one case, I had a class and I had this talk with the guy, and the other thing I made them do is I said, okay, if you're going to do this, then you have to commit to doing this for 6 months. And you have to show up to every single class. Broke your leg, car blew up, I don't care. There's no excuse that will keep you from coming to class. If you're willing to commit to that, then I'll teach you. And I do that for that reason, because if they don't, learn how to deal with it, then they end up walking away and, I can't make it this week and all that kind of stuff. So one guy, after giving him this speech, and I think we had one class together, the next week rolled around and he didn't show up. And I'm calling him and leaving messages, nothing. And I think it was a phone call or whatever it was, 2 days later. And he says, yeah, I fell asleep and I slept for 26 hours. I mean, he slept through the whole next day. He says, it's the weirdest thing. I don't know, and that was very clear. His unconscious was just not at all going to let him go through with it. So I don't remember what happened, but I'm pretty sure that I gave him an out and said, okay, well, obviously this isn't for you. Thanks for showing up. And just recently there was somebody I was thinking of teaching, and invited him over to check it out. And the day that we were going to meet, he got the stomach flu or something like that. And I said, oh, okay, to myself. I said, that's a pretty clear sign he's not meant to do that. So there's a reason why, like for instance, in the Abrahamic tradition, Jehovah has to give people 10 commandments. And if you look at those commandments, except for the four that are all about you can only worship, one deity. Outside of that, they're pretty common sense things. Don't kill, don't murder, don't don't cheat on your spouse with your neighbor's wife. I mean, they're pretty common stuff. To think that people have to be told not to steal, otherwise you'll be punished. I mean, that should just be common sense, right? You don't need to be told that. But a lot of people need that. They need the commandments. They need somebody else to take them through a big, long, path, because discipline is how people learn to tolerate their impulses and their feelings and their emotions. And then maybe after 20 or 30 years of disciplining yourself, then finally the energy starts to come, the real power starts to come, and they end up in the same spot as the guy who got the energy immediately but had to go through a radical transformation. You hear this in terms of shamans. The traditional understanding of how somebody becomes a shaman is that they're chosen by the ancestors, and then they go through radical, very challenging transformation where they lose their mind. They might have a near-death experience. They might become deathly ill. It'll be very traumatic on them, and there's usually some point where they have a vision or a dream or a shamanic journey where the gods and the ancestors chop them up into pieces and put them in a giant cauldron and then boil them alive and then pull them out whole again, and then they have all kinds of power. And that is just simply symbolic of the shaman doing exactly that. They're getting this fast track to power, and in order to do that they have to die to their attachments and their ego. Now, nobody ever truly accomplishes this, but there's usually some kind of, and I'll say this: my experience is that the universe will have different contracts with different people. Like with me, the universe is very clear. I have, I can't. There's a lot of things that I've known very powerful people who could get away with and do that I can't. If I do that, I get immediate karmic backlash or even physical backlash. So, if you decide to go into something like this, you have to be prepared. If you want to do things the way you want to do them, then don't go down these paths. Don't go down the path of power. Just continue to be a normal person and do your life, and then you can make all kinds of mistakes and do all kinds of selfish stuff, and you can be wrapped up in your ego, and you won't have to pay the price. But when you get handed the power, if you don't have the internal discipline to be willing to use that power only for the benefit of all knowledge and all awareness and consciousness, then don't do it. I can give examples of people whom I've seen who had a lot of power and they misused it, and the downsides of that, the karmic backlash, was more than anybody I think would want to go through. So again, like those movies, especially Star Wars, the evil Sith Lords always end up, either with, like Darth Vader's a really good example. He ends up, having to live inside of some, lung machine suit that he wears all the time, otherwise he'll die. The Sith Lord at the end is this old, dead body that's, there's a price to pay for acting on your unconscious selfishness. And the insidiousness of it is that people think, oh, I'm not going to do that, until they have the power, and then the temptation becomes overwhelming. So don't go into this with with childishness. There's no easy quick path without some kind of payment. And any teacher that tells you, "Oh, here's the easy path," and they've been hiding this from you, and here it is, and you don't have to do anything, and you can have instant enlightenment, don't listen to them, because they are either deluded themselves. And in my experience, any teacher who says that, if they have power, they are looking to take you hostage. This is what cults are all about. This is how cults work. And whether it's somebody that has some kind of, like the NXIVM guy who has some kind of promise of, whatever it is that I wasn't there, so I don't know what the payoff was for following him, but the ones that have power, and I've known ones that have power and promise to teach you ways of power, and they mean it, and they will give you paths to power, but what ends up happening is that you end up giving away your energy to them. In particular, they can set things up where they'll give you power, they'll teach you a powerful technique, but they will then hook into your aura, and they end up siphoning energy off of you, and or controlling you, and or hypnotizing you. Now, bear in mind, this won't happen unless there's a selfish part in you, the temptation of wanting easy power. Or what happens a lot of time with cult leaders is that the cult leader will represent to them unconsciously like love, or the love of the father or the mother, or the love of God or something, and no, he is the way to God, and I just want him to love me. And so they're giving up something in exchange for whatever power they think they're going to receive, or if they actually do receive. So, having said that, let me just lay the groundwork. I'm going to teach you and talk about a very powerful technique that has gone unnoticed. Some of you may have already been doing this practice. Some of you may already have heard of it. But I'm going to share it with you anyway. So before we do that, let's take some time to understand how the human body works. So here's what you may not realize. Everybody, when they're born human, and again, if you're one of those people that complains about being incarnated on this horrible world, and you're one of those people that wants to complain about this and that and exit the matrix, it's very sad, because you actually are living inside a vehicle, a machine, the human body, that has the ability to become a conduit for pure power. I mean, unlimited power. And that power can bring tremendous bliss, enlightenment, awakening. And you are looking around for it all over the place, and you don't realize that you're walking around inside of this vehicle, this machine, if you will, this bio machine that has the ability to become a lightning rod for unbelievable amounts of energy, the 5 elements, and so anyway, let's take a look at that. So the first thing I want to take a look at here is let's start here. So you've heard of the chakras. So you see over here on your left, you see the chakras, right? So you've heard about those before, and everybody talks about opening the chakras, and they think of the chakras in the way that I'm talking about. So they think if they open the chakras or work on a chakra, that the chakra will then be some kind of conduit to massive amounts of energy. People think of Kundalini that way. In fact, all you have to do is type in Kundalini on YouTube, and you will find no shortage of people who, in the first sentence, will say, Kundalini is the life force energy of the universe, which is absolutely 100% false. It's not what Kundalini is. So people, if they even are able to open up what they think Kundalini is, and they have all kinds of symptoms, they think they're channeling the life force energy of the universe, and that is just not accurate. There is, however, a way to channel life force energy from the universe, and that is the meridian system, which you see to the right. So you see all those, looks like little, electric wires, which is really what they are. And those go along nerve pathways, and many of the, we're not even talking about the dantians, which are, see if I can find them. They're around here somewhere. The dantians, here they are. I guess I got to get rid of one of these first. Or maybe I can move it. Let's see. The dantians, right? So there's the dantians. So there you have the 3 energy cauldrons, the navel, the heart. People, one of the things that drives me crazy is people confuse the solar plexus with the heart and the navel, and they'll use solar plexus in place of navel or heart, and they don't know what they're talking about. No, the solar plexus is just below the heart. But these 3 energy cauldrons, you have those, and then circulating around that, then you have the meridians, and then on top of that, or superimposed or whatever, you have the chakras, okay? So it's important to know which system you're working with in order to be able to get the most out of what I'm talking about. Hang on, what's going on there? That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do this. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to be talking to you about today are the meridians. And the meridians are one of the least understood and least used vehicles. So you see all those, there's a lot more than that, but you see all those lines on your body, those are meridians. Now these meridians can work in a couple of different ways. You can use them to channel energy directly from the universe. So the difference between the chakras and the meridians is that the chakras are kundalini. Kundalini doesn't exist outside of the human body. So the whole idea that kundalini is the life force energy of the universe is nonsense, because you don't attract and absorb kundalini into your body. Kundalini is something that is within the human body, and it's curled up at the base of the spinal column in the nervous system, and it unwinds and comes up through the spinal column and then opens up the chakras. That's how that works. Now, the meridian system and the chakra system can work together, and this is where a lot of people get confused. Because if you do a lot of breath work, which works with the meridians, the breath work can then kickstart the kundalini as well. And so there's a couple of different practices out there called kundalini awakening process, kundalini awakening something or other. And people are conflating. They're actually doing one and or both, and they're not knowing the difference. And like if you see somebody saying that they're doing kundalini awakening and they're putting their hands over people and people are shaking and things like that, it's not kundalini. It's life force energy. I suppose there's a possibility they might be stimulating the kundalini within the person. But again, if you're bouncing around like this and it is kundalini, that's a very bad thing. That's not a good thing. That means that your kundalini is very imbalanced and your body's going through spasms. Now, the meridian system, that's something else. You can tap into the meridian system, and if you're dealing just with the energy body, and the energy body is being stimulated, and if somebody has the ability to tap into that, then the energy body will start doing all kinds of things. And when you see people going into spontaneous mudras or yogic postures, or and it's fully spontaneous, that's the energy body. The energy body is being stimulated and it's balancing itself, and you are just watching. That can be very healing only if you have a powerful, balanced, conscious teacher who's protecting you. Because if you just stimulate the energy body and you are not sitting on the throne of your soul watching over and controlling everything, which is what happens when you're flipping out and you're going through one of these things. It means that your soul is no longer connected and it's just watching what your energy body is doing. And when that happens, it sends off all kinds of energetic signals out to the universe, and guess what comes? Look, it's like, you know, if you're in the water and there are sharks around and you start flailing around in the water, the sharks feel that and they go, there's an animal in distress, an injured animal, let's go eat it. And so that flailing about in the water actually sends out ripples and the sharks will come. Same thing happens to human beings. If you are flailing about because your energy body is being stimulated, by the way, it can feel really good, it can feel very blissful. And it releases all kinds of things that people mistake for joy. But it's very blissful, intense feeling. And if you end up having that happen, or if an unscrupulous energy teacher is able to do that and unlock that from you, your energy body from your soul, then guess what comes looking for you? Negative entities. Negative entities are, because they're negative entities because they're disconnected from the source. They're disconnected from the soul of the universe. And so they need to feed because they can't generate energy within themselves. So they have to find energy sources. This is why sometimes you'll see photos of ghosts hanging around electrical conduits. They hang around the electrical conduits because it's the closest they can get to the electrical energy that comes from human bodies. And negative entities like to slip into your energy body because what happens is your soul is like a nuclear generator. It constantly gives energy to you. So all of your energies, that's why when your soul leaves, all the energy dies in your body. Nothing works, nothing functions anymore. The heart stops beating, all the electricity leaves the body, and the soul dies. That's the power source of all of it. So a negative entity is going to want to climb inside your aura if it can and feed off of your life force energy that you're continuously generating from your soul. So when you have an unscrupulous and or uneducated or deluded teacher who happens to have real power, and you allow them to have access to your energy body like that, then you start flopping around like this. You have this blissful experience. He or she is going to be siphoning energy off of you during all of that. And then what will end up happening is if you don't have the ability to close that up, put your soul back on, or like many people, they get addicted to the whole thing and they may go home and do a practice that stimulates them to go into some spontaneous thing and they think they're having some kind of powerful spiritual experience. But what's happened is you've just flipped on the switch and all the lights in the house are flickering. And if you're doing that as a way to escape, which many people do, if you're doing it as a way to get high and escape, then you can end up with all kinds of ghost problems and entity problems and things like that. So, I don't know why I got into that, but there is a practice that I'm going to teach you, which again, you may have already learned how to do, which will tap into the meridian system. And two things can, depending on what technique you use, will happen. One is you have an infinite amount of energy already within you. It's like nuclear weapons, right? Nuclear weapons are, you split an atom. It's the energy of, whatever it is, the atom of, I just picked something. The atoms within this, lip balm, just the atoms within the plastic there, if I understand my physics correctly. If you're able to split those atoms, you'd have just unbelievable amounts of energy. And so you can release the nuclear energy within your body by tapping into the meridian system. And if you also connect to energy outside of you, stars, planets, deities. By the way, let's talk about deities. We talked about entities a little bit. So the difference between a negative entity and a deity is that a negative entity is a finite energetic being, usually made up of emotions, that runs around the world and is this tiny little thing in this huge universe. A deity is, let me see how I can best do this. A deity, well, let's talk about a rainbow. So there's light, right? So we see it as white light. But when you put it through a spectrum, put it through, a diamond or, something like that. What do they call those things? Anyways, the light is split into different wavelengths. So you can have, yellow light or red light or blue light or whatever it is. And that spectrum is just reflecting one aspect of the white light. And what deities are is they're like that. They are a spectrum of a light source. So you're getting a specific wavelength, but that is still part of light. So worshiping a deity is not the same as worshiping a negative entity. So I'm just telling you this because you're like, oh, I don't want to, some people don't understand and I don't want to worship a deity. Is that something outside of me? And they get into that. That's what ends up happening when you've come from Western religion, the Abrahamic tradition. So I understand the confusion. But you can use deities to connect into the meridian system. You can use the moon, you can use the sun, you can use stars, you can use all kinds of other things. So you can do both. You can stimulate the meridian system to just release the nuclear energy within your own body. And you can also use the meridian system to tap into energies outside of you. Deities, planets, things like that. And so this is really where a lot of power comes in. So in the tradition that I learned in, what I came to understand is that after somebody had mastered all of the complex moving forms and things like that, that at the end what would happen is that the Grand Masters would just do this very simple standing posture, and they'd get everything from that. Or they would do one very simple movement which contained all the power of everything else. And that's because they had already opened up all of their meridians. And so all they have to do is just do something very simple, which just simply keeps the meridian system open and connected. And then they can, in that stillness, even expand even more with the energy that they get. So I'm taking my time here. This one simple technique, you can find it anywhere. I teach certain variations of it, which to my understanding, I don't know any other place you can get these things. I don't know where else you can get them. So I've been teaching them to people. And that is simply standing postures. In Cantonese, they're called jongs, Jong. In Mandarin, it's zhan zhuang, but it means standing postures. And in the beginning of this video, you saw that picture. Well, that is me. That's me doing one of these standing postures, which happens to be connected to the power of thunder, which is why I have all the lightning in there. And that's a very simple posture, and those people who are familiar with it know the power of it. And on top of that, there's another little trick that you do with it that increases it even more. And it's connected. Now, I've been doing this long enough and been researching. I've come to realize why that particular standing posture does what it does. It's because it connects to a very specific meridian system in the body. And that meridian system releases within the body power that is latent within the human body, that's just looking to be unleashed. And so this is, why these things have been kept secret. And each sect may have their own secret standing posture and secret, maybe they have the same posture, but they have a slight little technique or trick to it that opens that up. So, I myself with this particular posture have found tremendous amounts of energy, and I'm continuing to find more and more energy as I practice it. And the little secret technique that you do with the fingers that you can't see in that picture, that also increases it, and I've been enjoying understanding how that works. But when you combine that with moving forms, this is the secret to real Kung Fu. So if you've watched, if you're at all interested in martial arts, you know that MMA, rightly so, spends a lot of time telling people how traditional martial arts are a waste of time. So much so that when you see an MMA fighter go up against a traditional martial artist, the traditional martial artist almost invariably loses. And one of the reasons for that is that that's actually accurate. MMA is a much more effective physical martial art. So if somebody wants to just go learn self-defense, just go find an MMA studio and start training, learning how to box and how to wrestle and do jiu-jitsu, and you'll be just fine. There's a reason why, the reason why it's the most popular form of self-defense is because it works, and it works really good. But many of the traditional martial arts, by the way, some of the traditional martial arts are, they're not anything all that special, unless you happen to be in 1600s China on the battlefield in a bunch of armor with a sword, and then those traditional martial arts, work pretty good. But a lot of the hand-to-hand stuff, especially in Southern Chinese martial arts, which, by the way, is not as nearly as popular. When people think of Kung Fu, they don't really think of the Southern Chinese martial arts. That's where you really find really nasty, really effective close quarters combat. But even then, if you were to take one of those traditional Southern Chinese close quarters combat styles, put it in the octagon, they would lose. And they would lose because even though those practices can be very powerful, if you don't have the secret hidden techniques to open up the meridian systems to really understand how to get that energy flowing, then all you're going to have is another physical martial art that may or may not be effective depending on the situation. And so when you see movies like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, is that how that goes? Yeah. And some of those, or my favorite one, which is Kung Fu Hustle. That's my favorite Chinese martial art movie of all time. When you see those movies that have these people, the legends of these Chinese martial artists that have all kinds of crazy supernatural powers, and they also tap into, and they become saints and all that through that, and you think it's just a cute little legend. It's not. That those people learned how to open up the meridian systems. And the reason why it comes through martial artists is because martial arts, there is especially Southern China. People don't realize this, but Southern China was a really, really tough place to live. I don't know what it's like now, but it was a very challenging place to live right up until modern times, and it was the Wild West, and you had to protect yourself from everybody. There were bandits everywhere. Every village had its own martial style, and a lot of people had to train in martial arts. So your life depended on it. The farmer next door wanted your water, and he'd kill you for it, or the bandits would kill you for $10, or the government might want to come in and raid your village or whatever it is because you happen to be harboring a Shaolin priest who's seen as a a rebel against the government. So if you didn't have effective martial arts, you could die. So they worked really, really, really hard to learn these spiritual powers that would give them superpowers. Because if they didn't, it might kill them. So that's the great thing about that. So interesting, like Tai Chi. Tai Chi is a really powerful energy practice if you learn it as an effective martial art. If you just learn it as to feel good, you're losing 90% of it. I mean, I'll just give you one tip. If ever you see somebody do Tai Chi and you see them do this with their hands, they have no idea what they're doing. Whenever you see somebody doing Tai Chi and they're doing big flowing movements, they have no idea what they're doing. There's no power in any of that. It looks beautiful. It's a very beautiful dance. There's no power to it. And so if you are practicing it as a martial art because your life depends on it, then you end up finding how to stimulate the meridians in the body, to connect to the navel center and connect to the pericardium and things like that, where the real energy power comes from. And then you become a very effective at self-defense, which could save your life. And then the end result of that, which is a byproduct of it, is now you also learn all these really powerful techniques for healing and for spirituality. So that's why you have these Shaolin guys that turn into all of these superhero, and saints and all of that, is because their life depended upon opening up their meridians, and then as a result they ended up finding out there's this whole spiritual world, and they connect to deities and planets and all that kind of stuff, and then they end up being these very peaceful people, but their life depended on having that energy to protect themselves. So the point is that these meridians don't give up all of their secrets easily. There has to be, on your side, there has to be a willingness, just like my ancestors did. You have to be willing to die for what you want. Those who die in battle go to Valhalla. So each one of those systems, if they were a real system, there was an outer court system where you learned the basic moves. You might learn some self-defense. Then there's, you get a little more and you get a little more. And then there's an inner court where they go, okay, forget all that complicated stuff, just do this. And they give you something very simple. They tweak your posture just a tiny bit. Or they give you one word or one mantra or one breath or one visualization. Or a standing posture they don't teach other people. And then all of a sudden you start getting all kinds of power and, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so standing postures. I've already showed you one right here, which is the thunder posture. I teach that in multiple places. I'm teaching that currently. If you're not familiar with it, go to the 90-day challenge. I teach you how to do it there. But we're coming to the end of the 90 days. It hasn't quite been 90 days yet, almost, since I introduced this. In fact, people have been asking me, aren't you going to add more? And I'm like, we haven't had 90 days yet. What's wrong with you? You already ready for the next part? So we are almost at the 90 days. And my plan is by the first of the year, I'm going to be introducing the second level. And on the second level, I'm going to be introducing some standing postures, and I'm going to be giving you little hints, slight tweaks to the postures that are already there that will increase the power significantly. And so it has been my intention to give you this 90-day challenge because it's important that you prepare your nervous system as well as your physical body for the power that's going to come. And I know from personal experience, I have, even since I've gotten back into this practice that I've done, I've shorted myself out, numerous times. I mean, I've blown a couple of fuses, already. In fact, right now I kind of have to give my body a rest because I blew a fuse. So I got a little too excited and I started doing some of this stuff, and my meridians are already open. So, I get, if I'm not careful, I overload myself. And that's a real danger with some of this stuff. You really got to know what you're doing. So doing the 90-day challenge will allow you to strengthen the meridians and the tissues of the body, as well as mentally and spiritually and emotionally, to handle what's going to come next. What's going to come next is I'm going to start talking more about how to work with the 5 elements on a deeper level, and how to summon the 5 elements into your body into a more powerful way. And I'm leading up to, I'm going to release, and I haven't decided in what format yet, but I'm going to release a complete Taoist high-level mysticism practice that will be a complete system. And so I'm currently working on that, and I'm currently, because I can't teach people in person, I have to make sure that I can teach it in the most powerful way possible, that also has within it safeguards which will keep you from harming yourself and or harming others. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So that's coming at the first of the year. Again, I think it's going to be in a different format. Because I want to make sure that the people who do that are people who are serious about it, and really committed to a real powerful tradition. But please don't let that stop you from this. This is also what you need in order to get to that point. The other thing you may want to, you're going to need to do it at later stages, is the Celestial Qigong. So you can get the Celestial Qigong in a couple of places. You can get it at spirittao.com. You can also get it for free if you get the lockdown package, which definitely before the end of this year, it's going to be done. Lockdown.thunderwizard.com. You can get the Celestial Qigong free there, and you can use those to get your. The Celestial Qigong is extremely good for getting the nervous system and the meridians opened and ready for this power. All right, so let's go ahead and take some questions here. This is a question and answer. Jameson Colliday has a ton of questions here. Let's see here. He says, question part 1. I experience weakened chakra and meridian energy flow and sensitivity. Would it be fair to say that the notion of chakra rebuilding is coming from the subconscious control of wanting to just power through with sheer force of will and forge and reshape the damage, wherein this Taoist approach, the idea is more that healing comes from reconnecting to the flow and balance? All right, so a lot of assumptions there. First off, you say I experience weakened chakra and meridian energy flow and sensitivity. So I don't know what that means. When you say weakened chakra, I don't know what that means, because lots of times a lot of people think they're opening the chakras and they're not. A lot of people confuse chakra, again, kundalini, meridian, chi, all that. So just because I hear you say that, I don't really know, and I mean that. I don't know. I would have to climb inside your body to know what that felt like, to know, okay, no, that is a chakra or anything like that. But my first thought is that chakras don't get weakened. That's not how chakras work. I know something about you, Jameson, and I'm willing to bet that this is a psychological, psychosomatic experience. You're feeling as though you don't have the chakra. The chakras aren't there, they're weakened. But I think this is because of perhaps giving up your boundaries to other people. And the end result is you feel, not connected to your heart or your higher self, or et cetera, et cetera. But so I don't necessarily think that's a physical thing. Also, and I don't know, but in your case, but also external chemicals will completely destroy any kind of meridian and or chakra energy experience. So now you're asking me this question, which is, again, you're wanting me to accept your assumptions, which might be accurate. Let me read it again. Would it be fair to say that the notion of chakra rebuilding, there's no such thing as chakra rebuilding. I mean, I know that there's maybe some videos out there that talk about rebuilding the chakras. There's no chakra rebuilding. You can't destroy your chakras and then need to rebuild them. It doesn't work like that. The chakras are the chakras. And the chakra system, let's take a look at it again. This is good information to know. So the chakra system has to do with maturity, psychological maturity. So if there are psychological imbalances, you may experience that as a weakened or destroyed chakra, but that's just not at all the case. The chakra is there just may not be enough kundalini flowing through it for the chakra. So in order to get the chakra to open and be powerful, which again, we're talking about stuff which most of the time people think their chakras are, and they're not. There's, for instance, if people want to focus on the heart chakra, you can do that, but more often than not, there's just all kinds of energy going to the nerve plexus here in the heart area, and you feel warmth and blood flows to it, and so you think your chakra is open, and it's not. There are some postures in the 90-day challenge, there are some postures that actually do connect you to your existing heart chakra energy, and that is something that can be done. But anyway, I think that your idea, that feeling that you have is a self-judgment that you're damaged, and you're not. Your chakra system is just fine. The way to open the chakras is to become psychologically mature. So working on your boundaries, working on acknowledging your own feelings, working through childhood issues, all of those things power the chakras up. So if somebody's doing a bunch of yoga and they're not conscious, psychologically, then they can do yoga all they want, and they're not going to open up the chakras, because the kundalini is only going to rise up through the nervous system and the spinal column as a result of your conscious awareness, your psychological maturity. So, again, anybody using yoga to escape their feelings, they may stimulate, some nerve endings and things like that, and they may feel like I'm not going to say it's useless, but their chakras aren't going to open. Chakras are going to open because you learn how to be safe and secure within yourself. You learn how to connect with others sexually, in a way that doesn't destroy your boundaries. You learn how to have your own identity. I'm going through the chakras right now. I'm on the navel chakra. You learn how to establish your own identity in this world, or you learn how to connect spiritually and know the difference between trying to get people to be part of your religion and just accepting that everybody's already connected to you and they can have whatever religion they want. And then you move up to the throat chakra and you speak your truth, and you learn through doing that. And then whatever lessons are up here. This is the chakra system. So the chakras don't get damaged, weakened, destroyed. It's just whether or not you're conscious and aware. That's it. So there's an assumption there that you're saying that somehow your chakras got weakened or damaged, and that may be because of psychological challenges you're going through, personal emotional challenges. And so you say, is the notion of the chakra rebuilding is coming from the subconscious control of wanting to just power through with sheer force of will? So I would say no. Whereas in the Taoist approach, the idea is more that healing comes from reconnecting to flow and balance. No, I would say they're both operating on the same thing. They both get to the same result. One focuses on Kundalini and the other focuses on Chi and meridians. But they both work together. You can't have one without the other. So no, it's, ideally the energy practice, whatever the energy practice is, whether it's yoga or whether it's Taoist stuff, whether it's right hand or left hand path, whatever it is that you do, the energy that comes in is going to bring up unconscious emotional, psychological issues. And so, I mean, it's a way that the universe cajoles you into becoming awakened. And how that works is you know, whatever it is, if you become awakened because you want to be conscious and aware, you know, and you work with a teacher or you go to a therapist and you work, that's your conscious, you know, that's your goal. Your goal is to be consciously aware, or to be mentally healthy, or to be happy, or whatever it is. Now, the universe also has come up with a really ingenious way to get you to that, and it gives you the goal of becoming powerful. Or in my case, I mean, I enjoy the idea of power, but I also get off on the high that I get. I mean, I get high from it. And this is why, I mean, I'm going to have to take some time off, because I'm actually doing myself damage, because I'm hooking into so much energy so fast that because it gets me high, that I'm actually burning out. You know, there's one right here on the right side of my body. There's a meridian that comes up right here down my arm. It's because I'm doing a lot of right-handed stuff in this work, and so I burnt out a meridian. So I gotta let it heal. But that's because I get off on the high. So getting off on the high of it, then what happens is all the emotions come up and you have to deal with it. And so as a byproduct of wanting more power, you have to work through the psychological issues, which makes more space on your hard drive. And the more space you have on your hard drive, the more energy that you can flow through. So I'm not sure that I completely agree with what you're saying there. I think there's some assumptions there. And what I hear in that is I hear a lot of self-negativity. I mean, there's a lot of self-judgment there about you, which just isn't accurate. You know, there's nothing wrong with having issues or feelings. It doesn't mean your chakras are weakened or any of that stuff. It just means that you know, that you have some work to do. And so I think you'll get that sensitivity and that energy flow back if just first start off, stop judging yourself so much, and let it be okay that you have whatever challenges and uncomfortable psychological feelings or issues that you may have. Anyway, I hope I answered your question. Dean Nevins, question: would you consider physical exercise a form of energy work? Well, yeah, I would. But there's a pretty big difference between, say, going and lifting weights and doing some intense Neigong or Qigong. Should we also use grounding and closing after exercise? Okay, so no, I don't feel like that. You know, like if I go to the gym and I lift weights, I don't need to go and ground into my, you know, ground my navel center or anything. Because just by doing exercise, your physical exercise is grounding you, because it's getting you into the physical tissues of the body. And so, I mean, that's why I think exercise is really good. It keeps you physical. It keeps you human. James Colliday, question part 3: and aligning with flow, flushing toxins and exercising meridian system through these practices, and healing will come eventually in more water method, not fire, and burning away trauma. James and I, you know, again, a lot of assumptions in there. I guess my final thing is that the chakra system and the meridian system work together. It's not an either or. It's just one. You focus on more than, you know, if you're doing purely meridian system, your Kundalini system is getting done by itself. And if you work on the chakra system, the meridian system is getting stimulated as well. It just depends on which one you want to highlight. So I would say just don't think about it that much. Just do the practice and deal with what comes up. Okay, let's see what else. Vincent.thunderwizard.com. Anybody wants to get a reading from Vincent? He is one of my apprentices. He's been, what's the word I'm looking for? I've certified him in my type of Vedic astrology. So if you go to vincent.thunderwizard.com, you can get a reading from him. And he says that the 90-day challenge has sparked him to begin a new career path. helping folks get past their unconscious programs. That's awesome. Jameson Colliday question about Tai Chi. If big flowing movements, there is no power to it, you lose 95%. Did you mean no fighting martial power or even the energy work, Negong? And is it just dance and no value? Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying. The way Tai Chi works is the meridian system. Tai Chi is a series of standing postures. That's the illusion of it. So when you see somebody and they're just going from one standing posture to another, and they happen to be turning their hips as they do it, it is a visual illusion that they're going. They're not, if they're doing it right. They're actually just doing this. They're doing hardly anything. They may be moving their hips as they do it, but their body, they're like, it's like if you had a mannequin that you could twist from the ankles. You could twist from the waist, right? And you just put it in one and then twisted it so that it pivoted like that. Now, if you weren't paying attention, you'd think that the mannequin was doing this, when in reality it's just going from here to here. And the finger alignment is really important. There's like, in the beginning especially, like in the beginning when you see people doing this and their hands are really weak. I've even seen like the guys, I don't know who they are, that like the Chen Man-ching, the guy who's supposedly like the guy who brought it, and you see videos for him from 1920 or 30, and his hands are dead. I can tell by looking at it, there's no energy in his hands, zero. Because you have to stimulate those meridians. So when you see somebody and their fingers are active, meaning they're not moving around, but the fingers are active when they're doing the movement, this is where all the meridians are coming from, like the middle finger especially. And in these fingers here, these are connecting to meridians that go all throughout the body. So just a slight twist of one of the fingers stimulates an entire meridian system in the whole body. And that's why you have those guys that can just barely move a little bit, and people go flying backwards, because their whole meridian system has is tapping into all kinds of energy. That's their meridian system is going down through their feet into the earth. So they're actually channeling earth energy up through their body, or heavenly energy, or whatever it is. And just by slight turn of the wrist and a slight move, if it's Tai Chi, maybe squeezing of the dantian, it's like a tube of toothpaste. You're squishing the toothpaste at the end, but all the stuff comes flying out the top. If you don't have a direct connection to the meridians, and just by doing this a little bit, all my hands are filling up with blood and with energy. So yeah, this is a dead hand. There's nothing going on there. Waste of time. Maybe they get some exercise from doing a movement. Some energy is going to flow. They might feel good, but this is why, if you're training in Tai Chi, try and find a Tai Chi teacher that actually teaches real martial applications. Because then you're going to get the energy flow. Because if you don't have the energy flow, even if it's just push hands you're doing, you're going to lose. This is why martial arts are so great for, and this is why in China, when kids were born sickly, the parents would take their sick kid to a kung fu guy, and the kung fu guy would teach the kid martial stances and all that, which would open up the meridian system, and then the person would become healthy. In fact, the guy who made Tai Chi popular, made it into this health exercise, was one of those guys. He was a little kid who was sickly, and he went and he learned martial arts from a kung fu master, and he learned Tai Chi, and it fixed him and healed him. And then the benefits of the healing, he watered down a lot of stuff and then just taught it as this healing movement, which was a disservice. Makes it easier, because doing this is a lot easier than actually, knowing how to flare out the elbows, and knowing how to, to round the back, and knowing how to, manipulate the fingers and to feel the connection. Because when you feel it, you feel like this bzzz in your whole body. You feel all this energy going through your whole body. That takes a lot of effort and discipline, and people don't want to do that. And if you're teaching 100 people in a park, they're not going to see all the little things you're doing with your fingers. They're just going to see a hand came up and come down, so they're just going to go like this. Bugs the crap out of me. And I went to, I wanted to learn Tai Chi from somebody who, that was their thing. And because of the work I had done, it was very easy for me. All I had to do was look at it, and I could replicate it because I would be able to immediately be able to feel what to do with the body to get those meridians popping. And I went to some class and I followed some guy and I did what he did, and I was in pain at the end. I mean, he was so off the mark. He had no clue what he was doing, to such a degree that I had to go and heal myself after that. Because my meridians were open and I was doing it wrong, it was causing me damage. Does that make sense? What else? A lot of questions here. Dean Nevin's question: I've been doing the 30 Saj Rune Mudra, Ing Rune Mudra, and the Hul breath as sitting postures. What's the difference when doing them as standing postures? I haven't taught them as standing postures. The 30 Saj Rune Mudra can be done as a standing posture, but you're better off doing it sitting, I think. We talk about those. I teach those things. So the Ing Rune Mudra, the 30 Saj Rune Mudra, all of that, those work really well for sitting postures. But the sitting meditations will be much more powerful after you have been doing standing and or moving, Qigong, other postures that really open up the meridians. So if you really want to open up the meridians, you need to do standing postures. Once you've done that, then after you've done an hour of a standing posture, or, moving things, then you go sit down, and then you put together one of these mudras, and then you're taking that, the energy, the meridians that have opened to the next level. So the sitting meditation is much more powerful after you've done a standing posture. So did I answer that question? Dean Evans questions: when I do the Ing Rune Mudra, should I also be holding my elbows up like there's a golf ball under my armpits? Yes. By the way, people are asking questions if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about. This stuff that I talk about in depth in the DVDs and in the streaming, the Celestial Qigong streaming. I teach how to do that, and things like, how to, feel like you have a tennis ball under your neck or under your arms, and why you need to do that and all that kind of stuff in order to open up the meridians. Okay, Jameson Colliday question: so then, since the damage is psychological, even though I can experience the impact of being unbalanced somatically, the healing has to be done at the wound level, not like a surgeon, and focusing on, this damage affects my whatever chakra meridian, so I'm going to focus on strengthening and letting that heal and extract the psychic energetic wounds, since that idea there is a detectable infection in my head. No, okay, so Jameson, you're just way overthinking it, my friend. So overthinking is the intellect's way of trying to protect you from feelings and trying to figure things out. Trying to, like, for example, let's say your girlfriend breaks up with you. I did this, everybody does this. You want to get closure. They've broken up with you, they've given you whatever reason, or they haven't given you a reason, and then you need closure, right? And so you have to go talk to them and find out, I just want to know why. Why? If you can just tell me why, I'll have my closure, and the truth is that it doesn't mean anything. Because the bottom line is they left you. That's the only thing that matters, is that they left you and it hurts. And I'm just trying to use this as an example. I'm not trying to focus on your life or anything, Jameson. This is just an example. It hurts. And no amount of why is going to make the pain go away. But when you're thinking about why and wanting to figure out why, and it's a way of wanting to control. Control comes from fear. And it's also a way of avoiding the feeling. So all I'm really saying to you, Jameson, is just have the feeling. This is what therapy's for. Just have all of your feelings without any judgment. Don't try and control it. Don't try and understand it. Don't try and understand other things or other people. Just have your feelings, and just, don't judge them, and be able to work them out and talk them through with somebody while you're doing all these other things, doing yoga or doing qigong or tai chi or whatever it is. The feelings will come up, but you'll have this really wonderful energy practice that will surround you and nurture you while you're having all of your feelings. And that's really ideally what all of these things can be best used for, is a way to evolve spiritually, really evolve psychologically, because power has nothing to do with spiritual advancement. That's the other thing I didn't talk about, but I've seen it firsthand and experienced it, that power, while it can be really energizing and very, give you, fill you with delusions of grandeur and all that kind of stuff, it does not make you happy. Bottom line is, are you happy? And so these are just tools to help you be happy. Now, I am also saying, as somebody who is an energy junkie and a power junkie, that if that's what makes you happy, then do that. Because this is what most people are doing when they take psychedelics, and when they take, or when they drink, or when they do any kind of mind-altering chemical. What they really want is the high that you get from energy work. But it doesn't have within it the payoff, the payment that you have to pay for the immediate effect of the chemical, is that you pay in physical health. Your physical body starts to fall apart. And psychologically and emotionally, you become more regressed. That's the payment. With the energy work, the payment is you have to die to your fear, you have to die to your victim mentality, which is very painful. You have to die to your intellectual control, or the illusion of control that you have with your intellect. You have to die to all of that and become empty and become vulnerable, and you have to feel the fear that goes with dying to yourself. But if you find a practice that's powerful enough, the payoff is worth it. You're willing to go through that because it feels so good. The energy feels so good. But then at the end of the day, the guy at the end of the day, he spent his whole life doing it, he's just happy and he's with himself. Let's see what else. Infinite 369 question. What do you think about COVID vaccine? Do you think is safe? Former president like Clinton, Obama, George W. Bush will take it, and they're going to do it on TV. Should we trust them? So one of the best ways to use my channel is to ask me questions about things that I teach, and to ask me about things I'm talking about. And I haven't spent any time talking about that. I have, I think, one video about COVID, which is really about, are nanobots going to take over our body, and is the government going to control us through nanobots? And people started talking like that because nanotechnology, which is used in vaccines, just means microscopic or tiny. And so you're using tiny little proteins. They're nanos. And those little nano proteins, those tiny little proteins, then the body theoretically responds to the protein and attacks it and builds up a bunch of immune system response to that, so that you become immune to the actual virus. And so I was making fun of people who thought that the word nano meant nanobots, little tiny electronic, computers that are in their halls. They're so uneducated and so full of fear that all they see is the word nanotechnology, and they think that you're going to be filled with tiny little computers with little antennas, and there's going to be somebody with like a video game controller controlling you like a robot. I was making fun of them, and people still didn't get it. Infinite 369, I don't talk about it. Here's my hope. My hope is that the COVID vaccine works and is safe, but I don't know. I'm not a medical professional and I don't know. And, there's a lot of fear about all this stuff, but the truth is that, vaccines have been used. I mean, I got vaccinated as a kid. I got vaccinated from polio and mumps and measles and all that kind of stuff. And I'm really grateful that they did that. My dad had polio as a kid in the 20s, and it almost killed him. And luckily, he was, and some people end up paralyzed from that. And he ended up not being able to swallow correctly. Like he would have to turn his neck to swallow. And he'd make a noise every time he did it. He'd have to turn his neck to swallow because his swallowing muscle, didn't recover fully. So, I mean, thank the gods that somebody comes up with that. There is danger to some vaccines. For instance, one vaccine you should never get is the flu vaccine. The flu vaccine will destroy your immune system. And there's all kinds of things about it that I don't understand it, but I've come to believe that the chemicals that they use are toxic and actually destroy your immune system. But the other thing is, from vaccine scientists, they will say that it's impossible to preemptively create a vaccine for a flu strain that we haven't seen yet. He says it takes at least a year. You've got to test it for a year to be able to, but by then the vaccine has the flu has mutated onto something else, and it's so going and getting a preemptive flu vaccine is a complete waste of time. And there's no shortage of people. You ask them, "Oh, I got vaccinated and I still got the flu," and then you get this nonsense. "Oh, but it lessens it." It doesn't do anything. That's all nonsense. So that I know because a vaccine scientist has come out, in opposition to the CDC, saying, do not take flu vaccines. It will destroy your immune system and they will never work. And he explains why. So I'm open and hopeful that the COVID vaccine will work. I don't know enough about it. People get all bent out of shape because, they hear the word RNA or DNA or proteins. And so they, it's really sad because it's really hard to get good information. But this is why it's really important. You shouldn't be asking me. Let's just look at, you're asking me. I'm a spiritual teacher, and you're asking me a question about medical science. And what are you going to, if I said, yes, you should do it, are you going to, and if I say, no, you shouldn't because tiny little computers are going to be put into your bloodstream? I mean, you guys believe whatever the hell people tell you. It's so frustrating. People talk about mainstream media. It's so ironic. People talk about mainstream media, and yet they're getting all their information from fucking YouTube. You can't get any more mainstream than YouTube. Seriously, guys. It's so sad that people don't know how to get information. It really saddens me. So let me just say, don't ask me questions about things I'm not an expert in. Because I'm a spiritual teacher doesn't mean I know the first fucking thing about COVID vaccines. So to answer your question, I have no idea. And here's the thing, should we trust them? Your question isn't about the science of it. Your question is, should you trust Clinton, Obama, and George Bush? They're politicians. And you want me to either say, yes, you should trust them, or you want me to say, no, you don't understand. They're part of this evil cabal. They eat children underneath Washington, D.C. pizza parlors, and they drink the blood of children. And you shouldn't trust them. And then because QAnon says, and people believe QAnon, but they don't believe, they don't believe the courts and scientists who say, no, the evidence is that that's the real vote count. Yeah, but QAnon, I saw on Twitter and I saw on YouTube, because I don't trust mainstream media, but I trust YouTube. Think about what you're asking me, Infinite 369. Think about it. It's so sad. You're asking me, should you trust Clinton and Bush? How would they know? I don't know. Do they have a degree in you know, you know, in medicine, vaccineology? I'm not saying one way or another about them. I personally think that they're human beings, and their desire is to be helpful. But whether or not they think it's a good idea, they're just choosing to trust the medical establishment. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, I assume Biden has been talking with these guys, and he probably trusts them. But who the hell knows? Anyway, hope I've made my point. All right, so I don't see any more questions here. So I think we're done for today. So bottom line here is this. Let me get rid of the whole meridian system and the chakra system thing. I recommend going to the 90-day challenge if you haven't already done so. Go and watch the video. I talk about it. I won't take up your time talking about it here. But one of the things we're going to be doing there is we are going to be strengthening the nervous system and the tissues of the body to handle the higher level stuff that is going to be coming. There's going to be other stuff that's going to be coming to the 90-day challenge, which will also be helpful for you to strengthen your bodily nervous system, etc. I'm going to create, like I said, I don't know what platform yet, but I'm going to create a complete Taoist, hardcore, left-hand path energy practice, and that you can, you know, so that you can have a complete system. So that's going to be coming soon. But start with this, and start with the celestial qigong, and we'll take it from there. So yeah, that's it. All right, so that's it for me, guys. Thank you so much. I will talk to you guys very soon. Let's see, what do I want? I got this new little thing. Tell me what you guys think of this. That's going to change everything. Now I'm going to get 1 billion subscribers just because of that. All right, talk to you soon.